The night of the mate ceremony was cold, and the great hall of Valethorn Castle glowed with torchlight. Wolves of every rank stood in rows, waiting for the moon goddess to reveal the bonds that would decide their futures. At the front of the hall, on a high stone throne, sat King Draven Ashcroft. He was tall and strong, with sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. He ruled with iron discipline, and he expected his mate to be just as strong as he was. Behind the crowd, standing near the servants, was a young woman named Lyra Sen. She wore a plain gray dress, and her hands were folded in front of her. She never spoke, not one word, not even a whisper, had left her lips in 10 years. The other Omegas avoided her, calling her cursed. The nobles called her broken. Lyra had learned long ago that silence was safer than trying to explain what she could not explain even to herself. When her turn came to step forward, she did not want to. But every wolf in the kingdom was required to stand before the throne, and refusing was not allowed. She walked slowly through the parting crowd, her eyes down, her heart pounding. The moment she stepped in front of Draven, something changed in the air. A golden light flickered between them, faint but unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the hall. The king's eyes widened. The bond had chosen its match, and it had chosen her. Draven rose from his throne, his jaw tight. "This cannot be right," he said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. He looked at Lyra, as though she were a mistake the universe had made. A silent Omega, a servant girl, with no title, no strength, and no voice. This is not the mate a king deserves. Lyra stood still, her face pale, her chest tight with humiliation. She said nothing, because she had nothing to say, or rather, no way to say it. "I reject this bond," Draven announced, his voice echoing across the stone walls. "Let it be known, I will not accept her." The words struck the hall like thunder. Some of the nobles smiled with relief, glad their king would not be tied to someone so lowly. Others simply looked away, uncomfortable with the cruelty of it. Lyra felt the sting of rejection burn beneath her skin, a mark that would now never fade. She turned and walked out of the hall without a single tear falling, though her heart was breaking in a way words could never hold. She was given one night to gather her few belongings before she was sent away from the palace grounds. No one stopped her. No one apologized. She left before sunrise, walking the long road toward the border villages, where the poorest and most forgotten wolves lived. An old healer named Myrna took her in. Myrna's cottage sat at the edge of a quiet village, surrounded by herb gardens and the smell of dried lavender. She did not ask Lyra questions, because she could see that words were not something the girl could easily give. Instead, she simply offered her a bed, a bowl of soup, and time. Weeks passed. Lyra helped Myrna gather herbs, tend to the sick, and clean the small cottage. In the quiet hours, Myrna would sometimes glance at the faint scar that curved along the side of Lyra's neck, shaped almost like a crescent moon. She said nothing about it at first. But one evening, as she brewed tea over the fire, she finally spoke. "I once knew a family with a mark like yours," Myrna said softly. "A royal family. From the kingdom of Wolfsbane, across the mountains." Lyra's hands stilled over the herbs she was sorting. She did not understand why, but something in her chest tightened at the word Wolfsbane, as though the sound itself carried a memory she could not quite reach. Myrna continued, watching her carefully. "Many years ago, there was a fire in the Wolfsbane Palace. A coup, they say, led by a traitor within the royal court. The king and queen were killed. Their daughter, the infant princess, was never found. Some believed she died in the flames. Others believed she was hidden away to protect her, and that whoever hid her never returned to claim her." Lyra's breathing grew shallow. Flashes of memory, broken and blurry, flickered behind her eyes. Smoke filling a golden hallway, a woman's voice crying out, the heat of fire pressing close, and then darkness. She pressed a hand to her throat, where the scar tissue from an old burn had always made her voice feel trapped, as if something had been sealed away long ago. Myrna reached over and gently took her hand. "I am not certain," she said, "but I believe your past holds more than anyone in that palace ever gave you credit for." Back at Valethorn Castle, King Draven was not sleeping well. Ever since he had rejected the bond, something had gone wrong inside him. His body ached in ways he could not explain. Sometimes, In the middle of a meeting, a sharp pain would shoot through his chest, as though an invisible thread connected him to someone far away and pulled too tight. At night, he dreamed of a woman with a crescent scar, her mouth open in a silent scream, blood on her hands. He told no one about the dreams, but his generals noticed the change in him. He grew short-tempered, distracted, and pale. His oldest advisor, a wise wolf named Commander Phelan, finally confronted him privately. "You rejected a bond the moon goddess herself created," Phelan said. "That is not something easily undone. If the goddess does not accept the rejection, the punishment falls upon you, and sometimes upon the entire kingdom." "She was an Omega with no voice," Draven snapped. "How could that possibly be the match meant for a king?" Phelan studied him carefully. "Perhaps you judged her before you understood who she truly was." Draven said nothing, but the words lingered in his mind long after Phelan left the room. Meanwhile, far from the castle, danger was moving through the mountains. Soldiers from Wolfsbane, loyal not to the rightful throne, but to the traitor who had seized power after the fire, had heard rumors of a silent Omega living in a border village, a girl with a crescent scar on her neck. If she truly was the lost princess, her return could threaten everything the usurper had built. They were ordered to find her, and to make certain she never spoke a word to anyone who mattered. It was early evening when the soldiers arrived at Myrna's village. Lyra was outside gathering herbs when she heard the shouts and the clash of steel. Villagers screamed and scattered as armed wolves stormed through the narrow streets, searching house to house. Myrna grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the trees, but it was too late. 2 soldiers spotted them and gave chase. Lyra's heart pounded as she ran, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She stumbled over a root and fell hard against the forest floor. The soldiers closed in, blades drawn, their intentions clear in their cold eyes. At that exact moment, a powerful force crashed through the trees. Draven had felt it, a spike of terror through the bond, sharp and undeniable, pulling him across the mountains faster than he had ever run in his life. He had told himself for weeks that the ache in his chest meant nothing, that duty required him to ignore it. But when the fear hit him like a blade to the heart, he understood at last that the bond was not a mistake. It was real, and it was hers. He arrived just as the first soldier raised his blade toward Lyra. Draven struck him down before the blow could land, his claws flashing with the strength of a king, protecting what mattered most. He fought off the second soldier moments later, his movements sharp and desperate, driven by something far stronger than duty. But in the chaos, one of the soldiers turned toward Draven from behind, weapon ready, and Lyra saw it before anyone else did. Fear surged through her, hot and overwhelming, breaking through every wall she had built around herself for 10 long years. Without thinking, without hesitation, she opened her mouth. "Draven!" The sound tore from her throat, raw and unpracticed, but unmistakably clear. Draven spun just in time to block the strike, saving himself because of the warning in her voice. For a moment, the entire clearing seemed to freeze. The soldiers, the villagers hiding behind trees, even Draven himself, stared at her in stunned silence. But it was an old wolf among the rescuers, a healer named Bren, who had once served the royal court of Wolfsbane before the fire, who reacted differently. He stumbled forward, his eyes wide, his hand trembling as he pointed at Lyra. "That voice," he whispered. "That scar, goddess above, Princess Selene." The remaining soldiers, realizing they had been discovered and outnumbered, fled into the trees. The clearing fell into a stunned hush, broken only by Lyra's ragged breathing and the quiet crackle of torches the villagers had brought. Bren knelt before her, his voice shaking with disbelief and relief. "I served your mother and father. I was there the night of the fire. I searched for you for years, but the trail went cold. We all believed you had died with them." Lyra, Selene, pressed a hand to her chest, tears finally spilling down her face. Memories, once fragmented and unreachable, began falling into place. A golden crown, her mother's gentle voice singing to her before bed, the terrible night when smoke filled the halls and someone, a servant perhaps, someone brave and now long gone, had carried her out through a secret passage and left her somewhere safe, at the cost of their own life. Draven stood frozen, staring at the woman he had rejected in front of his entire kingdom. The silent Omega he had called unworthy was, in truth, a lost queen, the rightful heir to a throne that had waited over a decade for her return. Shame settled heavily in his chest. He thought of the cruel words he had spoken in the Great Hall, the humiliation he had forced upon her before hundreds of watching eyes. He had judged her worth by her silence and her low rank, never once wondering what silence might be hiding. He stepped forward and knelt before her, an act no king had performed for anyone but the moon goddess herself. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I judged you before I knew you. I hurt you because I was too proud to see what truly stood in front of me. I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I am asking anyway." Selene looked down at him, her voice still hoarse from years of disuse, but steady now, stronger with every word. "You rejected me without ever asking who I was," she said. "You will not simply have me back because fate demands it. If there is ever a bond between us again, it will be because you have earned it, not because the goddess chose it for you." Draven nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "Then let me earn it," he said, "however long it takes." In the days that followed, word spread quickly through both kingdoms. Wolfsbane, still recovering from years under a false ruler, rejoiced at the discovery of their lost princess. Plans began quietly to remove the usurper and restore the rightful line to the throne, with Selene's return giving hope to a kingdom that had almost forgotten what hope felt like. Draven did not simply expect forgiveness to come easily, and he did not push for it. Instead, he stayed close, offering his kingdom's support in reclaiming Wolfsbane's throne, standing beside Selene, not as a king demanding a mate, but as someone determined to prove that his respect for her was real. He listened when she spoke, cherished every word after years in which she had none, and let her lead in decisions that concerned her own kingdom. Slowly, carefully, something began to grow between them again. Not the sudden pull of a bond forced by fate, but something built freely, moment by moment, choice by choice. Months later, when Selene was finally crowned Queen of Wolfsbane, restoring peace to a kingdom that had suffered for far too long, Draven stood among the crowd, not at the front, not as a king expecting recognition, but simply as a man who had come to support the woman she truly was. When their eyes met across the courtyard, Selene did not look away. And for the first time since the night of the mate ceremony, she smiled at him. The bond between them had not been a mistake. It had simply needed time. Time for a broken voice to heal, time for a proud king to learn humility, and time for the truth to rise from the ashes of a silence that had lasted far too long. Veilthorn and Wolfsbane, once strangers bound only by an ancient prophecy, slowly became allies bound by choice. And Selene, the queen who had once been dismissed as nothing more than a silent Omega, ruled her kingdom with a quiet strength that no one who had once doubted her would ever forget again.